Tonight, we are joining the vampires of Amsterdam as they gather to discuss the present state of the city. For those of you who have been following, welcome back. This is our first vampire session since the kind of major changes. We had a kind of a soft reboot, brief hiatus while things kind of shook out and new people arrived. Some people left. And the intent of tonight's meeting is to discuss what exactly those comings and goings mean. Some alliances have shifted, loyalties have changed, new faces have arrived and taken up some of the reins of power. And those who were here and those who have shown up are meeting tonight at a historic courthouse. The courthouse itself has served many functions over the years. Most recently, it was a bank before being closed. Tonight, it's being used as a neutral gathering point for the kindred to meet, discuss the terms of the city. Word has been whispered that the newly arrived sheriff will be present, as will be the scourge under Baron Gunnar of the Anarchs. As you guys arrive, there's a hooded fellow standing at the door, kind of motioning people in, that sort of thing. Very menacing, long coat, big hood. Really gives the air that you don't want to be here if you aren't supposed to be. As people come up, he kind of looks them over and waves them in. So far, the only people who have come up that you guys have seen are apparently people who should be there. Although, given this fellow's appearance and demeanor, easy to understand why. The courthouse is dark outside, but you can see it's been reasonably well lit inside. And you can see that there are some people gathering there already, mingling mostly with the people they already knew. And with that, I'll turn it over to you guys to introduce yourselves.
Jazz walks up the steps quickly, not liking being outside. She's not particularly pretty tonight, but she's not a masquerade breach, so that's a blessing. She kind of slows down as she approaches the gentleman, waiting for his approving nod. She's trying to discern if she knows who this person is or who they should be.
Yeah, as you get closer, you would recognize him, especially given the coat is a favorite of his. That is Detlov of the Nosferatu.
Evening, darling. How are you?
Yep. I'm not making money, and I'm standing out here, but it's not raining.
Praise be for small blessings.
He just kind of nods and says, well, may as well get inside. I imagine the less we stand out here, the better.
Sounds like fun. And she'll kind of pull her hoodie down a little bit and make her way inside.
Ailey's going to approach the building and she's going to kind of look up the stairs as she finishes smoking a cigarette. Just kind of watching what's going on out here, who goes in, who goes out, getting a general feel.
All right. Seems to be more people going in than out at this point. But it's a reasonably crowded gathering, if not all of the kindred, then at least some, or most rather, of the kindred from both parties are present.
All right. And once she finishes that, her cigarette, she'll just kind of flick it away from everyone and start moving up the stairs to go in.
A well-dressed, unobtrusive Englishman with a walking cane and a satchel follows you in. He looks around, and if he spots Sophia, heads towards her.
She is one of the ones present among the Anarch groups.
Then he will greet her happily and thank her for the invitation.
She looks at him and says, "Not rightly my party. I'm just the one who spreads the word." Should be an interesting gathering. See what happens.
Indeed, many of the things you've told me about the city, I hope to see for myself. It is a beautiful city from what I've seen so far, and has been welcoming. I hope it continues.
I wouldn't say welcoming is a real common term for what we are, but I'm glad you find it that way.
Testing.
I can hear you.
Okay. We'll walk up, more Hispanic-looking bend to her complexion. Similar outfit, ball cap, all that. She'll put her hands in her pocket and glance around and attempt to go inside.
And you get waved in. That laugh kind of just gives you a nod as you as you approach.
Thanks.
He looks at you and says, "You look like you're new here."
Kinda am. Kinda not. Anything I should know before I go in?
I'd say if you didn't know already, it's probably too late. But
Fair
I'd
enough.
consider carefully who you choose to call friend and how quickly.
Okay, that's reassuring. Thanks. Maria, she'll offer her hand.
He looks at her and says, "And I'm the guy who can get you things."
Cool.
And he takes your hand.
Should we shake it? Got a name, or should I just call you Guy?
Lots of names. Let's see how tonight goes, and I'll know a little better which one to give you.
Okay. Alrighty. She'll let his hand go and head in.
Ailey would see her, I'm assuming some sort of cousin. Arthur is present as well.
Okay. So probably stick around near him, being as doesn't obviously know anybody else, and it's probably more kindred kindred than she's ever been around ever. So all kind of strange. So yeah, she'll hang out by him. Taking it all in.
He quietly leans over and says, "Officially, of course, we cannot have sides here because we have the promise. And one of these parties is Camarilla. However, I have already established a working relationship with the now Baron by the name of Gunnar. And we can count the Anarchs as our allies."
All right. Good to know.
As people continue to gather, the majority seem to kind of know each other a little bit at least and gather accordingly. Most of them are kind of sticking to groups of 2 or 3. Not huge gatherings. Socializing with others they know, perhaps. The man at the door kind of holds his post, but also starts to look inside, kind of taking a head count, or seems to be anyway. And seems to also be looking for someone in particular. After a brief period, you guys would notice that the sides get a little more clear as the smaller groups start to really kind of line up according to who's who they get along with, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Well, the room looks like it's normally empty. More of a foyer walking area. Tonight, a fair number of chairs have been dragged in. Couple of the kindred presence start to gradually take seats as Detlov heads further in and kind of motions. There's a fairly lean Asian-looking fellow who takes up a spot near the door and nods back to Detlov. At which point the rest seem to take seats, quiet down, and it seems like that was a cue for somebody as a particularly large individual comes out of the back room. As he gets closer, you can see that he in fact has wings. And for those of you who know either your kindred lore or mythology, he looks like a vampire. Or a gargoyle. Of course he looks like a vampire.
Jazz is going to scribble down some notes in her little notepad.
Alright.
Looks shocked, but since nobody else is freaking out, she'll just kind of like look around and
Yeah, Ailey's eyes just kind of she looks at this dude and then just kind of like looks around.
And he looks around, and you can kind of see like he's waiting for someone to start something. And then he real low rumbling voice, he says, "Good evening, everyone. A pleasure to see all of you standing before me, that we might meet in peace and as equals." And he kind of sneers towards some of them. For those of you perhaps new to the city, or perhaps who weren't paying attention, I am Ryan O'Bear, a gargoyle. And he kind of looks around like, no shit type of look. Tonight, I've been asked to serve as peacekeeper as well. Agreed upon by both the Hound of Baron Gunnar, Jules Chauvis, and the Sheriff of Prince Montagna, Bob Anderson. If any of you object to my role as a neutral party here, I suggest you direct those objections towards either of them. I'd also suggest considering the fact that my kind is only free because of Camarillan efforts. Therefore, I have a certain level of respect for that faction. Is there anything anyone wishes to say before I turn the floor over to Hound Jules to open up this conversation? He looks around, and you can see one of the fellows on the what appears to be the Camarillan side kind of is grinding his teeth a little bit. And he looks and he says, Mr. Hanussen, your teeth grind almost as loudly as the boulders that my kind hide among. I would venture a guess that is displeasure over my role here. I can understand how that might be, as you are well known for your efforts in creating gargoyles during the 1940s when you resided in Germany. However, I would remind you that, again, your sheriff agreed to this position. I'm sure, however, if it is truly of concern, we could ask one of the others to fill in. Perhaps Mr. Magnuson, who is actually of Clan Sedite, although he stands with the Baron. The Sedites are considered unaligned, correct? And you see a couple others kind of, even some of the Anarchs kind of seem a little uneasy at that. Before the younger fellow there with the scar on his face finally comes forward and real Quietly, he goes, "That's enough now, Brian. I think they've gotten the point. I am the hound of Baron Gunnar Thorson, previously also the prince of this city, under whom my role was to serve as scourge. I am here with a number of statements on behalf of the Baron, as well as his offer for a sort of a armistice in the city. First and foremost, the Baron wishes it known that he does not object to the principles of the Camarilla, merely its willingness to sit on its ass while other things happen, rather than take the opportunity to be involved. Due to this, he has chosen to side with the more proactive Anarchs, but is quite willing to lay out a non-aggression armistice with the Camarilla and grant the Camarilla opportunity to manage a good portion of the city. I wish to make abundantly clear that this is not due to his inability to do so, but more due to his lack of interest in some of the day-to-day activities. Baron Thorson has a long history in this city and a number of personal endeavors he wishes to pursue, and in good faith cannot do so if he is trying to run the city as well, in its entirety. To that end, Baron Gunnar offers the following terms. All Anarch territories are to be respected and not entered unless prior permission is given. The exception to this would be in the pursuit of stopping an immediate masquerade breach, at which point he recognizes that to be priority over territorial disputes. The blood sorcerers of the Anarch faction are not to be molested and are free to continue practicing their magics and their experiments, regardless of faction beliefs on such things. In terms of feeding territory, Baron Gunnar claims the northern half of the rack, which does tend to be slightly more populated and active, for the Anarchs, ceding the southern half to the Camarilla. The red light district, situated adjacent to the typical rack, remains open to all kindred as unclaimed territory. Anyone is free to feed there. Exceptions are made for individual establishments owned or operated within the rack or within the red light district. In either of those cases, the owner is the sole authority within those boundaries. He cedes that the Camarillan Tremere may establish one chantry at an undisclosed location and one publicly known location, such as a storefront, a library, something of the sort, that can serve as a point of contact. Subjects within that location are free for the Tremere to claim, but they are not to garner thralls or recruits from the other occult locations of the city. This is due not only to the Anarch blood sorcerers' interests, but also due to the fact that there are other factions that have interest in those regions. And the Baron wishes to avoid conflict with those mortal mages and sorcerers, and also the wolf-blooded kin who might frequent such places due to their spiritual nature. The Anarchs, as fairly vocal supporters of old world pagan traditions, will not move against Christian elements of the city save in self-defense, out of recognition for the prince and his rank within the Christian church. The Anarchs will support and aid the Camarilla in any blood hunt outside of their own members. The Baron will not force his own people to hunt one of their own simply because the Camarilla gets their panties in a wad. The Baron is willing to cede control of the train stations for both feeding territory and transport to the Camarilla. This will give them plenty of means of transportation, trade, and relatively mobile feeding territories. Lastly, as a gesture of personal goodwill, the Baron will discuss his knowledge of the church's history in the city to Prince Montagna privately. As the prince is a member of the church, this would be perhaps more than an academic interest. Does anyone from the Baron's subjects have any concerns they wish to voice, or any objections to any of these elements?
Jazz just keeps taking notes.
Yeah, Bailey's eyes just kind of shift around, watching everybody's reactions. She's the new guy here, so, she doesn't have a whole lot to say.
Do those who are not familiar with the city breakdown have any questions? Or those independents who may not be aligned? I understand we have a couple of Clan Giovanni present tonight who may have particular views on this. I also understand we have one of the children of Hakim rumored to be among us.
Maria will raise her hand.
He nods and says, "Go ahead."
Just to clarify, my business would be fine to feed in and everything.
Assuming you either pay rent or own the property, yes.
Okay. All right. That's all I wanted to know. Thanks.
And provided you break no masquerade while doing so. I would hope that goes without saying, but assume nothing. Anything else? A lot of new faces here being quiet. Any questions on how or why this is relevant? How we got to this position? If you have not declared for a specific faction, recognize that you can be not held under these obligations, but nor do you reap the perks. The red light district, open to everyone, would be free territory, but if you are undeclared, you can hunt neither the north nor south halves of the rack, for you are not either of the factions that control it.
Oh, well, I believe I've set up my business in the right place. I'll be in the north. Hope that's going to be okay. I always fancied being a northerner as opposed to a southerner.
Well, you by default then have, to some degree at least, put yourself in alignment with the Baron.
Oh, yes, quite so. Quite so.
As long as such is understood, then I would say your alignment was established, even if
Very good. Thank you.
indirect.
Gwen raises her hand.
Yeah. Looks and nods.
Can an underlined kindred cross into the territories of the Camarilla and Anarchs? Is there a protocol or a way to do that safely?
Well, the specific guideline was that the Camarilla would not enter Anarch territories without prior permission. So technically, yes, you could enter. Feeding would still be prohibited within Anarch territories. As for Camarillan territories, the sheriff may wish to lay out specific policies for his own. But frankly, the Baron doesn't care what you do in Camarillan territories, provided you don't jeopardize the kindred as a whole.
Thank you.
Well, if there's nothing else, and as he says that, man he's dressed in a suit, but it's got like spikes on it and stuff, sort of like a neo-Gothic tux-looking thing, and he's covered in tattoos. Even his face and hands are tattooed. His face done up to look like a skull. And he comes up and lights up a cigarette as he's walking through everybody. He just pulls out his lighter and says, "Yeah, see, I got a couple of questions, clarifications, maybe even some objections, but we'll get to those. Let's start with the territories business. Respected and not entered by without permission by the Camarilla. We've established those not of the Camarilla are free to come and go. You say the Anarchs claim the northern half of the rack, and the Camarilla claims the south. It's all well and good. That's pretty cut and dry, right? Except for the fact that it fucks me and mine, as well as Mr. Gravedigger over here and his new family, friend, whatever the hell they are. You see, because we're not Anarch. We're also not Camarilla. But we're not just random individual folk either. So you and Bobby here better get something figured out. Or I can tell you, you're going to have problem because, well, I don't speak for the Giovanni. I can tell you there will be Assamites feeding in the rack. And if you're going to split it half and half, I'm going to feed in the whole damn thing wherever I please. And we can sort it out in whichever alley you find me in. Jules kind of looks back at him, looks around, and says, I'm going to let Bob present his side of things. I'm sure my proposal is not going to just be blanketly accepted with no changes or objections, but we'll make note that some sort of amendment should be made to account for those of you who don't stand on either side, but are in fact still an organization unto yourselves. The older gentleman there kind of stands up, and he's actually carrying 2 rapiers, one at each hip. And he says, well, Mr. Jules, you've got a fairly well thought out proposal. There's obviously a couple of details we're going to have to sort out. First and foremost, train stations is all well and good. But you and I both know, Jules, that this is a city whose lifeblood is saltwater. And if you think for 1 second that I'm even going to try to sell a proposal to the prince, or accept on his behalf a proposal that gives us no access to waterfront, you must be insane. I would seek 2 out of every 5 docks, whether that be separated by dockyard or by a predetermined footage, acreage, shoreline mileage, but 2 of every 5 ceded to the Camarilla, that we have decent waterfront access. Secondly, you have brought up that you will not move against Christian elements. It's well known that your Baron and his blood sorcerers who practice under his rulership incorporate pagan elements. Furthermore, they have ingratiated themselves and embedded themselves into the pagan communities of this city. A pagan community that is openly hostile to the Christian elements. Therefore, we call upon those anarchs in those communities to not only not move against Christian elements, but to draw their communities back from those conflicts. We toe a dangerous line when we begin to look back on the old crusades and see good ideas. simply saying we didn't do it, or your followers and puppets burn churches and priests, will not be considered acceptable. Third, not only will the Anarchs support any blood hunt the Camarilla calls, accepting their own members, which would go through a litigation between leaderships, they also will not call any of their own blood hunts without the prince's approval. To call such an active crusade forward jeopardizes all of us. You claim the Baron does not wish to see certain escalations. That is how we hold him to account on that. And last, the Anarchs will actively aid in the establishment of an additional Elysium for Camarillan use, and will respect the rule and territory of all Elysiums established under the Camarilla. He holds up his hand then towards Jules and he says, "Before you respond, I wish to give all of them opportunity to weigh in as well." Jules has offered a fairly well thought out, if slightly aggressive, proposal. I have countered with specific elements that I feel otherwise disadvantage the Camarilla, or give the Anarchs a way to slip a loophole past their agreement. Does any here have any questions on our requests? Or feel there's anything we have overlooked?
Jazz is going to raise her hand.
He looks at her, nods.
All right, so you're asking for, in addition to what was proposed, that you get 40% of the dock area without receding anything of the train systems. Does that not seem a little unfair? If you want water access, should you not be willing to give up some land access in return?
Well, as we've investigated, our evidence shows that the waterfront already serves as 70 to 75% of trade and transportation. Asking for 40% of that should put us at about a 50-50 footing for trade and transportation. That is not necessarily a firm number, nor was it wrote out by mathematicians of any sort. Yeah, turns and looks, he says, although we do have a banker among our venture if someone wishes to have it very tightly tallied.
Not necessary. I simply like to see things stay even. Fair, as it were.
That's understandable, and appreciate your willingness to at least voice your concerns.
As a member of Clan Nosferatu, though, I really would say that the Anarch Nosferatu should have some access to trains, as hiding in ships can be difficult when necessary. Hiding in a train car is much simpler.
I can see where that might be a factor. We are given to understand that Mr. Detlov of the clan Nosferatu already controls, if not all, at least a good portion of other transportation, however, including taxi cabs and rental vehicles. Hence, we were less concerned with the ability of your clan to be able to be effective in that venture. If you feel that Detlov's systems are not adequate, we could perhaps look at other arrangements.
I suppose I'm just playing devil's advocate at this point.
He nods and says, then we will shutter the rate of waterfront discussion for the time being. But recognize that it may be a negotiating point moving forward. Is there anything else? Very well then. Mr. Jules, what are your thoughts on this proposal? Are you prepared to accept on behalf of your Baron? Jules looks and says, I believe there's a couple key elements that need to be discussed a bit further. One, the demand that the Baron and the Anarchs call no blood hunt without Prince's approval. We would limit that to no blood hunt on Camarillan kindred. Should the Baron wish to call blood hunt on one of his own, on a member of the Sabbat, or a non-kindred, that should fall within his purview. Additionally, I must agree with the Nosferatu that 40% of the docks, when you maintain all train stations, is fairly steep. Unless we agree that you maintain the train stations themselves, while the trains remain unclaimed. Train yards, train cars, those being public. Alternatively, we could see to seating 1 in every 5 of the docks. The sheriff kind of stops and he rubs his chin a little bit. I believe I can, with the spirit of the prince's intent, agree that the Baron should be allowed to call blood hunts on those outside of the Camarillan faction, should he feel it appropriate. In the matter of transportation means, I would turn it back to the lady who first voiced said concern. On behalf of the Anarchs, and probably used primarily by the Nosferatu, would you rather retain 80% of the docks as opposed to 60? Or would you rather have access to the train cars and train yards?
Jazz will glance to a couple of her clan members if she can see them.
Detlav's not far away. He's the most prominent of the the Anarch aligned Nosferatu. And he kind of looks at you and just kind of shrugs and says, well,
Access to the cars and the train yards would be acceptable.
and the sheriff says, very well, I can certainly make that happen. We appreciate your cooperation. Do we have any other questions or concerns? I would be remiss if I did not mention as well, I am within authority to recognize any kindred who will declare as Camarillan, should they wish to do so. In the interest of disclosure, one of the prince's main concerns is to sort out the matter of the religious conflict and establish a stronger community of faithful. Jules kind of looks again and says, well, I would say with no further objections, I think that's going to have to be considered established and accepted on the part of the Baron. And Sheriff Anderson nods and says, "Very well then. On behalf of the prince, we will consider this agreement as well to be binding. Those who fail to adhere to this do run the risk of being released to be a target." Are there any questions on that? Excellent. Then, with all due respect to Mr. Jules, I will head out to report my success. And the interests of good faith to spread the word immediately. With that, Bob turns and heads out. The rest of the kindred kind of mill about a little bit. Jules looks around and says, "Well, I intend, for myself at least, to get to know a couple of the new folks. If anyone has any questions for me as far as what my role is, what the prince's, former prince, now baron's position on the city is, or his concerns, I will be available for a bit. With that, a number of the other vampires kind of start to mingle. A lot of the Camarillans do kind of head out. They seem a little bit more put out by the agreement, but their leadership accepted it, so they have very minimal say in the matter.
Jazz puts away her notepad, looks around, she's trying to discern if any of the people kind of stand out as of the new people that seem to be standing out as like part of like Toreador or whichever specific clans, or if they're just kind of interspersed.
I am well dressed like a Toreador, but I am too unattractive to have been embraced by the Toreador.
So you're a Bruja.
I do not seem to evoke Bruja vibes either. Bruja would be much more forceful, I think, than I.
Well, Jazz will walk around and kind of introduce herself to the people that she doesn't know. Just being nice, making connections.
There's a lone small redhead who's got a very leather jacket on. Her appearance does scream. That's a bruja.
And this woman, she's not pretty, but she doesn't look like obviously hideous as Nosferatu would normally be imagined. She's definitely not pretty, though.
Gwen is actually gonna approach her.
Good evening.
Good evening. That took a lot of guts to speak and make your needs aware in a room that was so quiet and intimidating.
Oh, I've never had a problem speaking my mind. I did it with Prince Gunnar back when he was the prince.
Gwen,
Jazz.
nice to meet you.
So you're fairly new here then?
One of the newest, yeah. Well, fairly new, yeah.
And have you decided which side you're taking in this?
I like to get information before I commit. How about you?
I'm still in discussions about that.
Good to know.
Probably going to follow Baron Gunnar, but that's just a hunch at this point.
From what I've seen, he's not a bad choice. But,
Oh no, I like the fact that he's very proactive. He actually does something instead of sit in some office somewhere.
I admire that. I admire that a lot. Getting stuff done. Having the guts to do things.
Having the guts to make such a drastic change when you're so old and still driven to make things better, make things right, as it were.
My experience, it doesn't matter the age,
Most
or the life, or otherwise.
Most older kindred tend to become very set in their ways.
Good to know. Good to know. Thank you for indulging me.
Certainly. I'm more than happy to help out a friend.
I give her my contact details. Feel free to reach out should the need arise. Thank you.
I will keep that in mind.
Thank you. Have a good night.
And to you, young one.
And she kind of wanders off.
Haley's still kind of just like chilling, looking around, listening, like almost definitely feeling very much out of place as it's all very new experience for her, and she's kind of got the resting bitch face as she just kind of looks around and listens.
He's just gonna be sitting by herself, kind of glancing around, just getting a feel for the room, looking as awkward in that place.
The Nosferatu comes and sits right across from you. And she kind of leans in on her elbows. So, pretty little thing. Why are you so, distressed?
I'm not really familiar with all this stuff. Motions of the room.
Your sire didn't teach you much. Pity.
Didn't have one.
Oh, my dear, we all have a sire. Whether you knew them or not, that is an entirely different problem.
That Nice to meet you, Maria.
Pleasure, Maria. I'm Jazz. Is there anything I can get you? Information? Very good with information.
I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out which one to go with. I'm not really sure.
Well, if you want any information, especially on the Camarilla, I'm currently teaching a young woman who is learning from her mistakes. If you care to sit in and learn as well.
Sure. Be great.
Wonderful. My class is growing by the moment.
I can look into. I mean, I don't want to intrude, but I can get you like blood and stuff. As payment or something if you'd like.
Oh, that's not necessary at this point. I stay generally well fed. You'd be surprised how many rats die in the sewers every day.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, if you ever want like human blood,
Oh, now you're just teasing me.
help you out if you need some or something.
I will keep that in mind, should the need arise.
Okay, appreciate it. So which clan are you?
Nosferatu.
Oh, cool.
And you, my dear, or do you even know?
No idea.
Well, I know people who could tell what you are, or find out at least. Makes me curious myself. You don't know your sire. That means you'd be clanless right now.
Mm-hmm.
Pity. Do you tend to have any flaws since your embrace? Do you stare?
What's your fangs?
That's not very telling, as it were. I was thinking more like staring off at something beautiful or being angry about things regularly. Or perhaps you become a little OCD or you hear things. Perhaps you just have a stick up your ass.
I don't think so.
Have you manifested any talents of the blood yet?
Yeah, a couple.
Ooh, what kind of things can you do? Can you throw a car across the street?
No. I can see and hear better sometimes, and
Oh,
let's see. Kind of been more commanding. Maybe-
interesting.
I think I hear dead people sometimes. But
You hear dead people, and like her whole face just changes, and like half of her face becomes very beautiful. The other half looks like the rotted corpse.
she looks freaked out. Yeah.
You hear dead people. Do tell me. I'd love to hear about it.
I think I just hear them speaking sometimes when I'm working.
Do they say anything interesting?
Most like regretting things they've done in life and didn't do.
Interesting. Perhaps I'll have to come and see if I can hear what you're saying, or what they're saying. Perhaps it's the location you hear them, since you said it's predominantly there. Where do you work again?
I own a mortician. building.
That would make a good reason to hear the dead. Are you hearing it from their bodies, or like their voices risen around you?
Think so?
This will require more research.
Do you
And she
hear dead
kinda-
people?
Oh, I can hear many things. You hear a lot when you're in the sewers, more than you would think. And she kind of waves her hand over her face, and she goes back to that not so pretty, but not clearly a dead corpse look. We all have our talents.
Looks pretty handy.
It's even more handy when you disappear, but that's much more difficult with all the lights on.
So, what is your? Do you live in the sewers, or is your?
Oh yes, that's where most of my clan lives, in the sewers. Sweet home, subterranean.
Is it something like like Fallout down there, or just?
Oh, some of us have little Christmas lights strung up to light our spaces. Some people have antiques. Some people just have what was that? A pallet that he lays on since he's dead. He doesn't figure he needs anything comfortable. Me, I have books. Building a small library, as it were.
How do you keep them from getting?
Not all parts of the sewer are filled with sewage. I do not have a river running through my room.
Okay. All right. So is the? She's motioning to part of her face.
My clan tends to have a less than wholesome appearance. It's our hindrance, one might say. None of us are pretty. Some of us once were, most of us weren't. But if you need something, it's the Nosferatu that you should go to first. Unless you're afraid. Then you can go pay the Ventru 10 times as much. Perhaps I should start raising my prices. No, that would just make the Ventru too much money.
Huh.
Please feel free to walk around, introduce yourself to people. That's what we're here for, getting to know all the new people in our city. By the way, welcome.
Thanks.
They look forward to getting to know you better.
Show her hand.
And she will shake your hand with her gloved hand.
All right. She'll kind of get up and go meander around.
Go talk to somebody.
Who's in there to talk to? She'll go over to Gwen. Yes.
Hi, you look new.
I am.
Newer than me.
Yeah. It's kind
I'm
of
pretty new myself. I'm Gwen.
Maria. She'll shake her hand.
Shakes your hand.
So when did you come to the city?
I was here about 8 months ago. About a few months ago. Let's just say my world opened up.
It's definitely different.
Yeah, no, you think? Let you in a secret. Right after I was embraced, I accidentally ate a rat.
I mean, doesn't sound like a terrible thing.
It was nasty.
Is Jazz still lurking around?
Yep, and she has a grin on her face.
Okay, so she heard that. I've had them. They're not the worst thing in the world. At least it wasn't a puppy or something.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'd be able to sleep during the day anymore. But, that's very true. But, may I ask when you were embraced? Or do you remember anything?
2 years ago, I think. Year and a half. I remember being really out of it. I think I was drugged and then woke up. And my friend was dead, and
I couldn't help but overhear that you do not know your sire. Neither do I. And it
Oh.
can be a little bit lonely and hard to be in a new city.
do you know which clan you are? Or
Been told Bruja.
we've got that at least. That's good.
Yeah. Not a whole lot of kindred friends. I'm working on it, but you need a friend. I know what it's like to feel out of place.
Same offer. If you decide you need blood or something, I can help hook you up with that. Won't be a ton, but
Thank you. I give her my contact information.
should
Thank
we
you.
return it? No problem.
So
She
then
will
I-
wave to Allie.
Ailey just kind of looks at her that same she'll nod, but it's still the resting bitch face. It seems to be like a permanent fixture.
You could
Gwen
go see
smiles.
her. You could go talk to her. Gonna just meander. Is Jazz still sitting across from her chair?
She's up and just wandering about.
Okay, she will go sit back in her chair.
Is Zachariah standing up?
He is. He's examining the mirror in the room, but oddly, he is not preening in front of it. He's actually examining the mirror, like the frame and where it's at, and it's strange.
Is he touching the mirror, or does he have his arms linked behind his back?
One is hanging at his side. The other one, yes, he's running it along the side of the mirror.
She's gonna walk up next to him and kind of put her elbow. How tall is he?
He is average height, maybe just a little tad under, so maybe 5'9"-ish.
Okay, so a woman comes up and puts her elbow on his shoulder, and it's clearly higher than her normal shoulder.
Oh, hello.
Good evening. Looked like you were having fun over here. Didn't want to miss out on anything.
Oh, well, I actually was hoping to speak with you. I heard a bit of your conversation. I don't wish to pry or eavesdrop, but that is your specialty?
To pry and eavesdrop?
Yes.
I don't think I've heard it called that before. I kind of like that. My specialty is prying and eavesdropping.
And you sell such information quite cheaply, and the Vintru overcharge for it. And I was wondering, I am always looking for opportunity. Perhaps I might mediate some opportunities with you, and you might get a larger share and nicer adornments for your sewer hole, if that is your preference, or whatever it is you might like. I could perhaps maybe import some rats from exotic locales for your enjoyment, I suppose. But if you'd be interested in such an exchange.
I don't think I'd ever considered exotic rats.
Oh, yes, there's quite different ones, different breeds, different sorts. I'm not a specialist, but I can hire one and we'll sort it out.
Having somebody to help guide questions to the right places can be useful.
Yes. So if we can replace whoever that silly Vintru was that was not doing his job well, and I could be your broker, I think that would be quite wonderful.
Oh, he's not my broker. Consider it more of friendly competition.
Well, as I said, I'm sure I can find you a better commission, a better rate. I would love to do business with you.
And where are you from? Don't think I heard your name.
Oh, Zachariah, so nice to meet you. And you are Jazz, I believe, yes?
Correct.
And is that short for something, or you merely like the music?
It's short for Jasmine.
Very good.
Ailey hearing all, she just can't take the rats anymore. she's heard rats, eating rats, exotic rats, far too many times. She walks outside right by the door and lights up a cigarette as she's face palming and shaking her head.
So you have some sort of contact information. You use phone, or is it merely
Cell
the rat?
phone,
Oh, very good.
email. It's the 21st century.
Well, I've actually met another Nosferatu, and he had a very strange thing, and he'd send animals about, and he would whisper his name into the shadows, and they would scurry off and tell him or something of that sort. But no, I much prefer phones and email. Excellent. And I hand you my card.
So sweet, though. And she's gonna like lower her voice down to a very quiet whisper, so unless somebody has like auspex and is listening in, they're not gonna hear it. It's actually pretty easy to sleep at night if you eat a puppy.
Was that to me or to someone else?
To you.
Oh, I give her an odd look. Well, I suppose that people who wouldn't sleep well are the sorts of people that I like to populate the town I'm in, because then I know they aren't a threat.
Oh, so I'm a threat now.
Well, darling, you eat puppies and have no remorse about it, and so you're very much a vampire, as opposed to those who would balk at eating a puppy and be concerned about it. I think they perhaps cling more desperately to that to which they once were. Is that fair?
We lost our humanity. We are no longer human.
Right, and that is why I said they cling.
Clinging too tightly just makes the past that much more painful.
Agreed. But I understand they are newer and fresher, and it is easy to want to hold on to childhood and the toys thereof.
Childhood toys. That reminds me, I have to talk to my brother later.
Your brother is
human.
Oh, then you are not very old then.
I've been dead 3 years.
Oh, well, then you have transitioned quickly, it seems, and well.
When you look like this, and she kind of waves her hand, and like half of her body, you can see, just becomes like this dead corpse.
Yes, one must adapt quickly. I understand.
It's not like I can go to a club and be like, hey, come here, I want to make out with you and bite your neck while the music's blaring so nobody hears you scream. Well, I could, but it would be much more troublesome with the response.
Well, the mortician was offering you human blood, but you did not seem intrigued by it.
Blood is blood.
Well, you are only 3 years old. I suppose that's true.
So far, I've had no problems keeping myself fed.
And your brother, have you retained his services?
I have.
Very good.
Quite useful fellow. He does my daytime running, as it were.
You never have enough servants.
So tell me, what clan are you a part of?
Oh, I'm fortunate enough to have been embraced by the Tremere.
Oh, Tremere. And her eyes kind of light up almost curiously at that mention. Perhaps you could help me then.
With the lass who is confused about her nature?
The one who doesn't know what she is.
Yes, yes. I thought
heard,
I might be of use there.
I heard that Tremere know ways of finding such things. I've not seen it myself, but I've heard tales of it. It sounds interesting.
Aye. But when she described speaking with the dead, that really did somewhat emphasize, I think, a particular clan of note. And if her other abilities do not line up with that, then I may not be able to discover anything. But I would be happy to try. As I said, I would love to give you some gifts, and perhaps in the future you can give me some.
Wonderful. So wonderful. And she links her half-dead arm through one of your arms and starts walking towards Maria.
And I happily escort her, seeming unfazed by her actual appearance.
Maria's in her chair from before.
Maria, my dear, I would like to introduce you to Zachariah.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Greetings, Maria. It's my pleasure.
She'll hold her hand.
Say again?
She'll hold out her hand to shake.
I pause for a moment, and then I'll reach forward. As you shake my hand, you, with your auspex, notice that I, in fact, have a very, very thin glove.
Okay. She'll pull her hand back after.
So, our friend, Jazz, was hoping that I might taste your blood. Would you be interested in that?
I guess you just want me to like prick my finger and give you some of my blood, or?
Well, I mean, we can exchange as much as you'd like, but if you'd really like to start with just the prick, we can start with the tip.
Okay.
Jazz loses it.
So I will gently put your finger in my mouth and give it a tiniest of nibbles and taste your blood.
Okay.
I'm afraid to roll dice, but I will face my fear.
Willpower, you can do it.
I
Roll your
don't know that I
willpower.
can do it, but I'm going to try. If I run screaming from the room, I blame you.
Hey, it worked last night, right?
Ailey's gonna come walking back in now from outside, pretty much in time to see the finger sucking.
Oh yeah, it's happening.
So I assume 5 successes are sufficient?
She kind of
I mean,
raises an eyebrow.
I assume you're using
Taste of blood? Yeah, I think she's a caitiff, but I'll go ahead and go through the steps anyways, just to make sure. And survey says?
well, you based on your taste and again per the description here, you would know how much vitae remains in Maria. I assume a fairly substantial amount.
Yep.
She is a vampire. I assume fed fairly recently, didn't come hungry to a gathering.
Yeah.
Approximate generation, 3 or more successes, whether they've ever committed diablerie. I would assume not.
Nope. She's
And
15.
so you would recognize that her blood is thin enough that you can't really discern it.
Oh, so she's like 14th or 15th?
She's 15.
Oh, wow. Okay. I look at her strangely, confused.
And the Tremere instantly spits out the blood in disgust.
Yeah, that
I didn't know it was that kind of party.
Are you someone's ghoul?
She looks around like she's not sure who he's talking to.
You, darling, are you a revenant?
No, I don't think so.
How odd. I shrug at Jazz, saying that I'm not even sure she qualifies as a caitiff. My assumption was wrong.
How curious. How curious indeed. And she kind of looks like she's pondering some thoughts and ideas.
Looks slightly awkward at that, but we'll shake it off.
As you guys are kind of talking, Jules comes up and he says, considering the topic of blood magic was one of the focuses of this armistice, and we met here as a neutral place and just got done agreeing to abide by Elysium terms, do you really think using said blood magic was a prudent decision?
My apologies. She requested it. I thought that the terms were I shouldn't be using things on people that they don't like. But if someone requests assistance, I would have assumed that just as the Nosferatu can cloak their appearance, that I can attempt to help solve someone's desire for knowledge of their patronage. No? My apologies if I am incorrect.
Given it was in an Elysium, it would violate the tenets of Elysium. And ultimately, a Nosferatu cloaking themselves is upholding the first requirement in that they uphold the masquerade.
Well, in this case, this woman may not even be a vampire, or barely so, and so I think that would be just as important to determine, wouldn't it?
It could be, but time and place is crucial.
Well,
especially when we have, as I said, very angry Tremere of the by the book variety.
Well, we are on this topic. What are the other rules for Elysium? I'm afraid I'm not familiar.
They don't like us to use our powers, although
I gathered that.
usually it's more of the confrontational sort.
She has a heavy Scottish accent, by the way.
Confrontational is a relative term. And when they don't like the fact that you have blood magic because you don't conform to their system, its simple use becomes confrontation.
Well, I certainly don't want to ruffle any feathers, so as I assume you are the Elysium Keeper here, I proffer my apologies.
I'm the guy who doesn't really want a war. Mainly because I don't feel like having to kill everybody tonight.
What exactly started all this, out of curiosity? If I recall, from last I heard, it wasn't split, as it were.
Well, as I alluded to, Gunnar, who had been the prince previously, had other matters he wished to pursue. Matters which took his attention away from the city. Previously, he asked for support from the other kindred as they were supposed to support him as prince. They felt his requests were unreasonable and driven too much by his personal desires, failed to aid him. So he resolved the matter without them, summarily executed a handful of local clan leaders, and then proceeded to inform the rest that if they wanted the city managed, they could do it their way.
And what did they deem not worthy to assist with?
You got super muffled there. Don't know.
She asked what deeds he asked of them to do that they didn't agree with, or refused to assist with. They didn't find worthy of their time.
Well, he had conflict with other supernatural entities.
Oh.
Most of them were personal, but when your liege lord has a personal disagreement, you're honor bound to support that.
She simply nods.
So have his issues with these other supernaturals been resolved?
I believe largely they have been.
Oh, good.
Mainly through the use of excessive force, but...
Oh, my.
Anything the rest of us should be concerned about?
I don't think so at this point. I believe Gunnar has everything well in hand. His particular sanctuary is ran much less formally than a Camarilla in Elysium. Probably due to the fact that it harkens back to his days as a tribal warlord, so to speak. He likes to operate on older principles. Things like guest obligation and privilege and keeping your oaths.
I see.
Murdering everyone who's hostile to you. I find myself rather fond of the man because of that.
Yes, well, I certainly want to stay on his good side because of that.
He was
Well,
a
it's
very
part of-
honorable man from my experiences with him.
Are there any Camarilla vampires around right now?
Most of them appear to have kind of headed out. They seemed relatively displeased with the agreement on the whole.
So there are some, though, still here?
Yes. Most prominently, the man at the door was is known to be Camarillan gangrel by the name of James Kim. Some other ones who are present are Rosaline of the Bruja. The Tremere did head out, but there's also a woman who appears to be most likely Ventru.
And most of the Camarilla vampires are new immigrants for the establishment of the Camarilla prince? Or did many of Gunnar's subjects not like him and stay behind in the Camarilla?
Well, he had some that became less of fans after he killed the heads of 3 clans.
Which clans did he behead?
That was he started with, of course, the Ventru, because if they're going to call themselves kings, they get to pay the price first. Eliminating Soren, who had been kind of their poster child, as it were. Although he did take some joy, I believe, in killing the head of Clan Toreador. The man was a historian, and Gunnar widely disdained him because he would not even take the time to ask Gunnar about events that happened in the city, offering conjecture when Gunnar lived through it.
Oh, so this guy felt he knew better than someone who, well, lived through it.
He liked his theories, and they didn't always match up. And then the head of the Malkavians, after their clan was found to be responsible for a number of issues.
And so did the Bruja, Gangrel, Nosferatu, and Tremere heads come over with him to the Anarch side?
Well, all of the Tremere who were in the city when under Gunnar came over with him. The Nosferatu split. My personal suspicion is that it's because there's more money to be made when you play both sides. Most of the Gangrel, not that there was a lot to begin with, but those that were there came with Gunnar, as he is himself Gangrel. Other than Mr. Kim there, who was a shitty Gangrel who remained with the Camarilla. My personal suspicion is that too is a matter of convenience and perhaps in the best interest of the clan. Certainly they are not hurt by having someone on that side who can potentially still converse with Gunnar. Again, that's just purely my own personal conjecture.
So with
Perhaps
the
Mr. Kim simply liked the opportunities that came with the Camarilla more.
So with the quelling of the supernatural threats and this armistice between the two factions, there's really no drama in the city currently.
Oh,
There's
I-
always drama.
I believe there will be plenty. For one, we now have two factions of Tremere, one of whom is not well liked by the other due to differences of practice. And of course, we have the ongoing religious conflicts. Gunnar and many of his followers are practitioners of old ways, while the recently arrived prince is in fact an abbot of the Benedictine monks.
Ugh.
Humans nowadays barely pay attention to religion. It's hard to understand why vampires do.
Oh, in this city they pay attention.
They pay far more attention to religion than you give them credit for.
Yes.
Especially when you have those supernaturals of other sorts that adhere to those beliefs as well. Werewolves are largely spiritual beings.
She kind of raises an eyebrow at that.
Yes, well, they're quite largely physical beings as well, so you're quite right.
Can also say with some certainty, although I have not met many of them, that the mortal sorcerers are grounded in their beliefs heavily. We also, as I said, have a gangrel leader who killed a Toreador, a Ventru, and a Malkavian, all widely regarded by the Camarilla as clans of more relevance.
Sometimes a primogen just has to be put down.
And they probably would have tolerated that if it was a primogen. But when a prince executes 3 primogen, it tends to leave a bad taste in the mouth of some.
Well, I can certainly understand that. Personal experience.
Especially if there is possibility that they might be next.
So is there a pool for when war breaks out then? Do we get to choose a date? I would like to make a wager.
I don't think there has been. He chuckles a little bit at that and he says, but perhaps there should be.
I'll put
Although
one together.
I believe the entire point of today was let's not have a war.
Oh, of course, of course.
Again, as I said, I don't really relish having to kill everybody. There's a lot of paperwork involved in that.
You are the strongest in the city.
Paperwork.
No, just one fully comfortable with murdering other vampires on a regular basis.
But if you're not the strongest in the city, then you won't be killing everyone.
It is entirely possible to kill those stronger than you, especially when you are willing to go to lengths they are not.
Who is stronger than you in the city?
I believe a wide variety of kindred could be, and given the number of new folks, I would not even pretend to venture a guess. But I have techniques and practice that others have not honed. Not to mention taking the often unwelcome approach of a masquerade breach is dependent on witnesses. If you murder everybody, there's no witnesses.
True.
I realize that approach is distasteful to some, but
The La Sombra usually have a more delicate hand.
some do.
Shadows and whatnot.
Shadows
Shadow.
also hide bodies. Or murderers.
Or both.
Frequently both.
And don't mortals simply bend their will to you on command?
Sometimes. Like anything, it's not foolproof. On the flip side, barring our Giovanni friends here interceding, the dead generally do not speak.
Except to that strange revenant mortician.
There's, I suspect, something else going on there. I just have not discerned what yet.
Yeah.
Now, for the pool, it will be disqualifying if you initiate the hostilities, you understand? But what day would you like, and how much would you like to put on the day?
He chuckles a little bit and he says, I suggest we put that thought process on hold for now, but I do like where your head is at.
The house, of course, keeps the money if peace stands. And of course, that's my dearest hope.
I do agree that peace would be for the best. I do not relish the thought of violence, nor do I think it's in our best interest.
So you have no theories as to who the strongest in the city is, though?
Well, statistically speaking, one could venture a guess it could be Gunnar. Then we have to determine how we define strength. Strictly physical capability? realms of influence? Are we including other supernatural communities? Are we offsetting strength and ability by drawbacks, limitations, and restrictions?
Oh, that's all very complicated. We usually measure it simply with the taste of their blood.
I would say Gunnar is the oldest, most likely.
I have encountered none older. If that is the criteria we are using, then with the information I have, I would have to say he is likely the most appropriate candidate.
Well, then it is good that we are in his service.
It is, but it puts us at odds with a Catholic vampire. Something that deeply concerns me.
Hopefully he's one of those sorts of Catholics that wants to convert instead of burn at the stake, yes?
No,
Not likely.
he
Not
has
from the way
been
they
through.
spoke. From the way they were speaking, it sounds like he plans to get retribution for slights to his people in the church. Not that the pagans haven't already paid their own price in blood.
Well, who is going to be Gunnar's ambassador to the prince? You?
Well, I imagine for the few times that they will have to meet, it probably will end up being me.
Oh. Well, then I'm sure you can smooth over any ruffled feathers, explain that Gunnar doesn't want to disrespect them, and it's not his job to pay for blood guild for all crimes against the Catholic Church any more than it is the job of the new prince to pay for the guilt of every perished priest and his sins.
Yes, and that you'd think that would be a reasonable approach. However, I would say evidence is to the contrary.
If I were you, and this is just a bit of advice, you can of course ignore it. Sophia spoke to me a little bit about your past. You hunted Nazis, is that right?
Indeed, part of why
And
Mr. Jan does not like me.
And Nazis did imprison the Catholics in their camps, did they not?
Very few, and when they did, it was generally on the grounds of ethnicity.
Oh, I was under the impression that they were a bit more anti-Catholic than that. And so I would think that you protecting Catholics from the Nazis would provide a bridge of understanding.
They were more anti-anyone not German than anything else. The fact that that happened to include most Catholics was not because the Catholicism was ever grounds for them. No, I'm sure it will all play out in one way or another.
Oh, I'm sure of that.
But I suppose I should circle back to Gunnar as well and give him the news.
And do please pass on my regards.
Yes, I'm sure he'll be happy to know that at least some of the newcomers stand with us as well.
Indeed.
And with that, he turns and heads out. Anything else any of the rest of you guys want to do, or should we handle everything else in Blue Books?
I think I'm good.
I didn't get to talk to Allie very much. Is Allie much of a talker?
Depends on the situation, really.
So I will turn to her then. I'm sorry, miss. I didn't catch your name and lineage when we were speaking before. My apologies if I wasn't paying attention.
Ailey Duncern of Clan Giovanni.
Oh, well then you must have a particular interest in the mortician.
Not really,
Oh?
if I must be honest. I'm not very well, I see dead people, that's about it.
You're not concerned she's some careless bastard?
If she were, I think my cousin would know about her. I don't think she's one of ours.
Interesting. And this talk about blood sorcery, there is a bit of an overlap. Do you not think it will affect you and yours?
Well, it could. I'm not 100%. Well, I mean, if we don't mess with theirs, they're not going to mess with us. That's kind of how the deal works.
The angry Nazi-loving Tremere seemed to be a bit put off, but I certainly hope you're right. What day are you going to pick, and how much?
I am not going to pick a day just yet. Though I admit that this is quite amusing. I have not been here long enough to see things and know people to see how that would go.
Are you recent to the city or also to the night?
Yes.
And how recent?
Well. My human life isn't very far behind me, but it's new enough where this is my first time being in an Elysium.
Isn't it riveting?
It's something. In fact, I don't think I've ever been around this many kindred at once before. It's kind of overwhelming.
So your cousin has just recently released you?
Sure.
And your cousin has sworn to Gunnar?
He's well, we kind of toe the line as independents. I mean,
So you'll be restricting yourself to the red light district then?
I don't know what he intends to do. Like I said, I'm recently arrived here, so.
Well, here's my card, and if I can ever be of any assistance, I love to make new friends.
Yeah. And she kind of looks the card over. Interesting. It's a pleasure to meet you.
And you have some contact information for me?
I do. Do you have a something I can write it down on?
Oh, yes. And he pulls out his notepad, and he'll just wait for you to tell him, and he'll write the notepad.
She'll give him her contact info.
Okay.
It's just a phone number.
You and your cousin have already set up your haven, I assume, and have no problems then?
I couldn't hear you, sorry.
Your sire and you have set up your haven, and you have no issues then?
I have a home, yes, and my sire is back in Scotland. I'm here with other family.
Very good. Well, I look forward to meeting again then.
And I look forward to meeting you again, sir. She'll kind of give Jazz the rat eater a small nod.
She smiles like this. She just has this grin on her face, like, I know something you don't know.
Ailey kind of raises an eyebrow. Well, I suppose that being said, I should be on my way.
Have a wonderful evening.
You too. And she'll give you guys nods. And casually head towards the door.
All right. As everybody kind of starts to filter out for the night, word does kind of get spread even to those who are not in attendance that these articles were accepted by both parties and will be formally noted in at least one Elysium by each faction. With many of the vampires already kind of starting to decide how to divvy up their factions' holdings. And I think with that, we will wrap it up. Any other conversations players wish to have with any of the NPCs, feel free to pursue by Blue Book. This has been another episode of Nightfall in Amsterdam, a vampire session tonight. We look forward to having you join us again. Thank you, players, for playing, and watchers for watching.